Hello, listeners of the Raw Onion podcast. I am your host, Stephanie Ohanessian. I am the consultant of my company, Triage Balanced Life, and we are in the business of neuroscience and burnout mitigation, and behind the scenes creating all the magic that you do not see, but we would not be here without, is my esteemed and incredible partner, Yoshie Barnett, who is an expert in the fields of crossroads coaching and perfectionism. And if you notice the themes that we hit on a lot of the times, it is from our own sort of disciplines and expertise, and we always try to go deeper, and we try to find people who know even more, because what her expertise is, what mine is, we are optimizing to be of service in an ever-changing world. And today is no different. Ladies and gentlemen, I am going to start with something that might sound a little uncomfortable, but we're going to be okay. Take a breath. I just want you to hear me out before you come for me. I don't think you will, but it might make us a little uncomfortable, but we're going to talk about it. There is a new version of intelligence right now, and we dipped into that a bit last week, but I'm going in a different direction. We're adding a layer, right? We peel back, we add. That's what the raw onion does, right? So a new version of intelligence right now, and that is actually just well-articulated hopelessness. Don't shoot the messenger. Let me break that down. Well-articulated hopelessness. It sounds sharp, it sounds informed, it sounds realistic, but underneath it is a nervous system that has quietly given up on influence. And we've started to confuse that with wisdom. So today, on the Raw Onion podcast, I want to talk about something that feels almost controversial in this moment. Hope. Not the soft kind, not the blind kind, not the kind that we might sit in a meditative state and try to manifest and hope for the best, but the kind that requires actual discipline. Because the real question isn't, is the world okay? The real question is, who do you become in a world that isn't okay? So let's talk about cynicism masquerading as intelligence as we break down what hope is. There's something happening culturally right now, and we all know this, we all feel it. Cynicism is being rewarded, and that's a hill I will die on. If you point out what's broken, you sound informed. If you disagree or disengage, you sound above it all. But here's the uncomfortable truth. The brain often defaults to cynicism not because it's accurate, but because, what? It's protective. Do we see a theme now, folks? Optimizing for safety, whether we're right or wrong, whether we're accurate or not. The brain defaults to cynicism because it is protective. When the brain perceives repeated stress or lack of control, it begins to conserve energy. This is where we move into something called, what is it? Learned helplessness. When the brain starts to believe, quote unquote, my actions don't change outcomes, and when that belief sets in, motivation drops, curiosity drops, effort drops. And it is not because we're lazy, it's because your nervous system has decided, why bother? Why bother? And I have actually felt this a lot in the last probably 5 or 6 years. Whether that's a correlation to post-pandemic culture and mentality, I might venture to say yes. I think it's safe to say we've changed. collectively. There's something that's sort of on its head and something weird. I don't know. Hey, am I the only one who feels that? I really don't think I am. It's a different world out there now. Things take more effort. People are a little more suspicious of each other. And, I'm guilty of it too, that things seem to take more effort. If I could sit and bed rot all day, I probably would, more so than I would like to admit. It's that sense of a potential spiral into why bother? Why bother when things really look too big, when we've bitten off more than we can chew? And again, talk about the discernment of this entire series of March, right? Discernment in the age of chaos. We're taking in too much. We're not designed that way. And eventually, we're going to tap out. And what's the brain going to do? Why bother? My actions don't really matter. And this is where most people stop the conversation. So let's talk about the biology of giving up. Most people say, well, that's just the way the world is right now. Nothing little old me can do about it. But neuroscience tells us something a lot more interesting. The brain is constantly updating its model of reality based on what it experiences repeatedly. Folks, us humans, we are very, very funny that way. We're basically a bunch of alchemized patterns. We operate in patterns. We operate historically with what's come before generationally in repeated patterns, not because they're best for us, but because they're known. They're automated. They're subconscious. So, updating the model of the brain's reality is based on what it experiences repeatedly. That is what neuroplasticity is. We know that buzzword, neuroplasticity. That's what it is. Which means if you repeatedly consume content that reinforces powerlessness, your brain becomes more efficient at expecting powerlessness. If you repeatedly engage in small acts of agency, your brain becomes more efficient in initiating action. Hope is not just a feeling, ladies and gentlemen. It is a pattern your brain learns. And that is why you see so many advertisements now for optimization, for brain hacks. Listening to neurologists, neuroscientists say, what is neuroplasticity? We can reform our automatic pilot behaviors and what? Patterns. That's what this whole thing means. It is a pattern your brain learns. Hope. And here's where I want to shift something. Most people are waiting to feel hopeful before they act. But biologically, it's the other way around. Action creates the evidence. Evidence creates the belief, and belief creates the hope. Tattoo that into your brain. Start with repatterning by listening to this again. Action creates evidence. Evidence creates belief, and belief creates hope. Not the other way around. We can be waiting a lifetime and we'll all end up at 100 years old, sitting comfortably on a recliner, still hoping that somehow we're going to feel better and feel like we are motivated before we act. But if we understand that right now, it's the opposite way around. And this ties into something called locus of control. Locus of control. People with an internal locus of control believe, quote unquote, my actions influence my life. People with an external locus believe things happen to me. But here's the nuance most people miss. Locus of control is not fixed. It's a trained, experienced throughout the action. Let me back this up a bit in case I'm getting a little confusing. Locus of control is not fixed. It is trained through experience. And how do we gain experience? Through action, right? Have you ever applied for a job and sit there and laugh at the irony of saying, this job requires 10 years of experience in the field of this job. Well, how the heck am I going to get 10 years of experience if I don't have the opportunity to have the job? That has happened so many times before when I've applied to something. It's just completely strange and ironic. They want the experience before you get the job, but how do I get the experience if I don't get the job, right? Weird. It's the same kind of thing. Control is trained through experience. So every time you take a small action and see a result, your brain updates. I can influence outcomes. That's what the brain begins to learn when you take action. And when you can influence outcomes, guess what that is? Agency. And now let's bring in the brain in terms of choosing your response to this action. We're going to bring up our friend, again, the prefrontal cortex, and that beautiful part of your noggin right behind your forehead, the key part of your brain responsible for decision-making, reasoning, and future planning. Prefrontal plays a key role here. When we're overloaded, overwhelmed, stressed, or constantly consuming chaotic information, the brain defaults to a more reactive system. Short-term thinking. Oh, I can't expend too much energy. I just got to make the decision quick. Emotional reactivity. Oh, I can't really take the time to think critically of what this person just said. I'm just going to emotionally react. And defensiveness. Ooh, I don't like what that person said, and I don't have the energy or the time because I'm so overwhelmed. I'm just going to get defensive instead of actually process what the person is saying. But when the prefrontal cortex is engaged, you gain something powerful. You gain choice. The ability to say, this is happening, but this is how I will respond. You're taking a beat. Hope, in this sense, is not denial. It is the decision to stay engaged with reality without being consumed by it. And so let's define something a little more clearly here. When we look at the discipline of optimism, right? Optimism is not a personality. It's not something you either have or you don't. Optimism is a discipline. And what do we always talk about? The brain in the age of chaos needs discipline and discernment. Otherwise, what we just said here, your brain is going to be optimized for panic, for defensiveness, for short-sightedness. So when you really bring in optimism as a discipline, it is the repeated decision to look for possibility without ignoring reality. It is the repeated decision to take action without guaranteed outcome and to stay open without becoming naive. And that requires regulation, because your brain will often pull you toward fear, certainty, prediction, control, and we know that the external world is optimizing to give you all of that. It wants you in fear, uncertainty, and control, because that's how you get addicted to that, again, what? Doom scrolling, that trance-like behavior. Oh my God, everything is awful out there. It's hopeless for me to even take action. But when your brain is regulated, optimism interrupts all of that noise. Not by pretending everything is fine, but by saying something is still possible here, and that's what I'm going to participate in. And this matters beyond just you, folks, because how you respond to uncertainty is something other people learn from too. And that is a theme we've talked about this month. Optimism, agency, it's not about discerning so you put your head in the sand and become apathetic. No. You become action-oriented in your home, within your behavior, within your community. It's something other people learn by watching you, especially children. Nervous systems learn through modeling. So if a child grows up watching adults respond to stress with shutdown, cynicism, fear, that becomes their baseline. But if they witness regulated responses, measured action, and grounded hope, They learn that even when things are uncertain, I can stay steady. That's generational impact right there. Everybody wants to talk about breaking the cycle. Boom, regulate yourself, and there you go. You're on the road to breaking those cycles. And we've spent this series talking about discernment, not about being pulled into every emotional stimulus, but the final step isn't just engagement or disengagement, it's redirection. You're going to have feelings no matter what. The choice, the agency of how you funnel and act on those feelings, you have 1,000% control over. Moving from reaction to contribution, because outrage feels active, but it doesn't produce anything, right? Contribution is quieter, but it builds something. So the question becomes, where can you actually influence something? Not globally, not abstractly, but in your real life. And here's something very simple. And this is what we will leave you today with. And as we round out discernment in the age of chaos, define your sphere of influence. Get out a pad of paper and a pen. This doesn't have to be a sophisticated Rembrandt that you're going to be drawing, right? But define your sphere of influence. Who do you impact? What can you actually impact? Your work, your relationships, your health, your immediate environment. Put that down in black and white because it matters. It doesn't just matter, it is so vital for today's climate. And then apply this principle. Act locally, regulate globally. Act locally, regulate globally. Meaning, take action where you have control and regulate your nervous system around what you don't. And one more shift, folks. Consume less, contribute more, even slightly. Because contribution is what restores agency. Contribution is an action, and that restores agency. Action is agency. So let's come back to the question. How do you stay hopeful without being naive? You don't wait for hope. You're going to be waiting a mighty long time, folks, if you're sitting around waiting. You don't wait, you practice it. You practice hope through action, through restraint, through discernment, because hope is not a prediction about the future. It's a stance you take in the present, and it shapes what you're able to build from there. So as we wrap up today's episode, and next week we are going to go into an entire series on the aging brain. Yoshie and I are thrilled. We have incredible professionals that are going to be guest hosting and guest starring with us. But before we get excited about that, I will leave you with this as you really think about chaos in this time and what we can do to find hope and agency. Discernment is not withdrawal. It's conscious participation. Conscious participation. That is how we will all get by together. Not by withdrawing, but by understanding that discernment is conscious participation. So until next week, Yoshie and I thank you from the bottom of our hearts and the tops of our brains for listening, and please follow, subscribe, and comment. We want to build this community. Ask questions. Let's answer them. And until next week, we thank you to have us with you to keep peeling back that raw onion. And we appreciate you. And we sign off for now, over and out. Thank you so much. Take care. Be well.